You might have noticed that season 2 of Bridgerton, the Netflix series, was heavily influenced by the Shakespeare story, The Taming of the Shrew. Right down to one of the characters' names, Kate Sharma, as in Catherine. So it was very exciting to see that season 3 of Bridgerton is basically the mythological story of Cupid and Psyche. I'll be talking about the version of the myth that we get from the Roman poet Ovid, so I'll be using the Roman names instead of the Greek names for this video. So, what am I talking about? Well, you might have missed it, but in the first half of season 3 of Bridgerton, the character Cressida Cowper actually likens the dynamic between Colin Bridgerton and Penelope Featherington to that of the myth Cupid and Psyche. It seems like a weird throwaway comment, but it's actually so obvious when you think about it. First of all, I'll tell you the Cupid and Psyche myth. I'll keep it brief and concentrate on the themes that are borrowed in Bridgerton season 3. So once upon a time in ancient Greece, there was a beautiful noble woman called Psyche. She had 2 very beautiful sisters, but they were not as beautiful as her. The 2 sisters, no trouble finding husbands, they're just fine. But Psyche can't find a husband because she's too beautiful and nobody wants to marry her. Her parents are concerned, so they go to an oracle and they receive a prophecy that Psyche will actually get married to some kind of hideous monster. Meanwhile, the goddess Venus, aka Aphrodite, is insanely jealous of Psyche's beauty, and she asks her son Cupid, also known as Eros in Greek mythology, to go and shoot Psyche with an arrow to make her fall in love with something hideous. But in doing so, Cupid accidentally scratches himself with his own arrow and falls deeply in love with Psyche, but from afar. Meanwhile, Psyche's parents are devastated about the prophecy and they take her to a cliff, dressed in wedding gear, where she has to jump off of the cliff, but she actually gets rescued by the west wind, Zephyr, who whisks her away to a meadow and then to a palace. She walks into the palace, there's a beautiful feast, a disembodied voice tells her to sit down, make herself comfortable. As it gets dark, the disembodied voice tells Psyche to come into the bedroom, where Psyche gets, I guess, unofficially married to this disembodied voice and also has, marital relations with it. The owner of the voice is, of course, the god Cupid. I probably should have mentioned that this Cupid is an adult Cupid and not the little baby cherub that we tend to think of. Some time passes and Psyche is only able to see her husband at night, but gradually she starts to fall in love with him, and she becomes pregnant. Psyche really misses her sisters and she tries to convince her new husband to let her sisters come and visit. The west wind takes the sisters over to Psyche's new palace during the day, and either Psyche's sisters are very jealous or they're concerned for her and they kind of convince Psyche that she is married to a monster and that since she's now pregnant, she should try and kill the monster because surely that monster will eat her and her child. That night, after some lovemaking, Psyche gets an oil lamp to try and take a peek at her husband, but also to try and kill him. But as she realizes that her sleeping husband is this beautiful god and not a monster, she accidentally pours lamp oil on Cupid and injures him, and then he flees. Psyche tries to chase after Cupid, but she becomes lost in the wilderness. During her wanderings, Psyche tries to get the help of a few different gods. She tries to get help from Pan, and then from Ceres, also known as Demeter, and Juno, also known as Hera. None of these gods are able to help her, however. And Psyche realizes that she has to try and serve and convince Cupid's mother, Venus, that she is a worthy wife. This is where we find out that Venus is terrible. She has Psyche whipped and tortured. Venus also orders Psyche to complete a series of impossible tasks, including a trip to the underworld and back again. Let me know in the comments if you want more details on these tasks. This whole time, Cupid has actually been in his mother Venus's house and has figured out that his wife is here and that she's trying to do all these things to please him. He rescues the exhausted Psyche and then asks Jupiter, for permission to marry whoever he wants. Psyche becomes immortal, they get married, and they live happily ever after. Now back to Bridgerton. Why does this make sense? Why does this matter? The obvious part, Penelope Featherington has 2 sisters who have husbands by season 3, and she's the only sister without a husband. First of all, there's so much imagery in Bridgerton. There are countless statues of Venus everywhere. Penelope's often wearing butterflies, and Psyche famously has a pair of wings, even in ancient artwork. The ballet scene in season 3, they're actually dancing out the myth of Cupid and Psyche on top of a mosaic of Cupid and Psyche. One of Psyche's impossible tasks involves giving cakes to the three-headed dog Cerberus, and, well, there's a lot of cake in season 3 of Bridgerton. But I guess let's talk about Colin. Penelope enlists Colin's help to help her find a lover, a husband, and Cupid is the god of making people fall in love with each other. And at some point during her lessons, Penelope takes a peek at Colin's private journal and then injures him with a lamp, just like Psyche took a peek at her husband and then injured him with a lamp. Now, it's only been the first half of season 3 that has come out so far, so I'm not really sure who's going to be playing this kind of a Venus character. Who is Penelope trying to get approval from here? Could it be Eloise, since Eloise knows that she's Lady Whistledown and therefore would not approve of Colin and Penelope getting together? Or could it be Queen Charlotte, who literally calls herself Venus in the Queen Charlotte series? No doubt Colin will find out that Penelope is Lady Whistledown and will be very angry at her. And just like Psyche, she'll have to somehow win back his trust. What will be the impossible tasks that Penelope will have to do? I can't wait to find out. So stay tuned.